Hello, good people, and welcome to the To Be Encouraged podcast with the Bishop Julius C. Trimble. I am your co host, Reverend Dr. Brad Miller, and this is the podcast where we look to offer an encouraging word to an often discouraged world. And unfortunately, we've had a fair amount of things that are going on in our world to be discouraged about, but I always can count on Bishop Trimble to give us an encouraging word, especially relates to Scripture and applying it to our lives. So, Bishop Trimble, welcome to our conversation here today.
Thank you, Dr. Brad. My friend, it's good to be in conversation with you. I've really been wrestling with and praying over the resurrection, if you will, of the Golden Rule.
Hmm.
Somehow it seems in our society and in the worldwide politics of recent weeks that we have lost sight of that. And I want to encourage those who are followers of Christ and people of faith all across the world to embrace the golden rule. And that simply is that, in everything, do to others as you would have them do to you, for this is the law and the prophets. These are the words ascribed from the New Testament, both in Matthew and Luke, of Jesus. But in essence, ought we not care enough about others in the way we would want them to care and treat us and our loved ones? We often talk about the sacredness of all human life. And I think in recent weeks, there seems to be almost promulgation and promotion of retribution and violence when we know that an eye for an eye just leaves us all blind.
Oh, well said. I know that it just seems like the golden rule, doing to others as you'd have done to yourself, is really pretty basic to Christian thinking and theology. I mean, it's not all that hard to get a hold of, even for people who may have a tendency to think about, their own selfish needs and whatever they would be. They think, I would rather be treated the way be treated well in this kind of thing. And yet we have a world where a lot of people are leaning on words like retribution and violence and things of that nature. And we got to turn this around. We got to get back, as you say, a resurrection of the golden rule. So, Mr. Tribble, what's your thinking on this? What are some of the ways that we can be a part of a resurrection process for the golden rule?
But I think we had to realize that much of Jesus' teaching, many could say today, many might accuse Jesus Christ of being woke
Mm,
or
yes.
upside down thinking. When the last shall be first, uh, you know, uh, and to not just love your neighbors. We often say that Jesus says you love your neighbors and shall, but Jesus also said, love your enemies.
Hmm.
Now, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. said that he said we are not out to hate people. We hate evil policies. We hate the evil that happens to people. We hate the evil that oppresses people. We're not out to hate other human beings. And he's famous for quoting that is Dr. King, Brad, was saying that hate cannot drive out hatred.
Yeah.
Only love can do that. Darkness cannot drive out darkness. Only light can do that. And I just want to be an ambassador, unapologetic promoter of love and justice.
Yes. Love.
Not a jellyfish love, if you will,
Hmm.
where we just everything is okay and everybody's okay and no matter what you say is okay, but the kind of love that holds us accountable for the golden rule. So I think the golden rule requires a certain amount of discipline.
Yes. Well, I think also what you're sharing here about Martin Luther King Jr., we could go back to Gandhi and Jesus, of course, himself, about nonviolence and about approaching things from a perspective of trying to be, blessed are the peacemakers and so on. That does not mean being passive. It does not, the whole area of nonviolence with Martin Luther King Jr. and others was extremely engaging, extremely active, assertive, and so on. And so we, I think, need to have a resurgence, a revival, as you say, of ways to be nonviolent, lift up nonviolence, and not we're the whole turning the other cheek, sometimes people took that as being, passive or weak and that kind of thing. I don't think it is, but I think a lot of people do. So
Mhm.
help us gain this whole thing about being love and justice. So let's just take those one at a time. So how can we show love for people who have been pretty daggone unlovable?
Well, I think one of the things we can do is to not only say we will pray for you, but we will engage you and respect your right to disagree, but your right not to disturb my peace or my sanctity or my right to be respected. So I think the notion that I think we've long passed the point where we can say we just have a simple disagreement.
Yeah.
It's not a disagreement if you embrace a notion that you're superior to me or to others based on your race or based on your economic class. That's to me a violation of the notion of of the golden rule. In fact, the recent budget that has been driven solely by the president and the Republican majority in the House is a reflection, in my opinion, of a violation of the Golden Rule. Because again, remember the Golden Rule says, "In everything, do unto others as you would have them do unto you." So I don't think that those of us who have access to health care would want uh, by the stroke of a pen or the vote of a legislative body to all of a sudden have 600% increase in our insurance premiums, which
Hmm.
many people will experience later this fall
Oh yeah.
uh,
Oh yeah. Just
if the
really
current
tragic.
budget stays as is,
Yeah.
and those subsidies that were provided by the Affordable Care Act go away. Medicaid support for rural hospitals will go away, and we'll see the closing of rural hospitals. And the people who can least afford not having some support from the government will be placed in a position of extreme vulnerability. 15 million people, according to some reports, will be cut off from health care. 800,000 caregivers, people who are caring for the elderly or caring for a loved one or caring for a child with a disability, people will lose some or part of their benefits. There's so many things that are happening to me that really violate the notion of what does it mean for us to really embrace that all of us are valuable, and that the government and the private sector and the faith community should all be concerned about the most vulnerable of our citizens, as well as what can we promote for the common good.
Yeah.
And
And you
what
start.
about making America as healthy as possible? What about those kinds of things?
Yeah, because you're leaning now into the part of our discussion regarding justice and so on, and yet it's hard to get to the justice unless we have some sense of speaking the same language. We talk about being loving and caring for others and loving for them as we would have them treat us. And yet sometimes there's a lot of mistreatment going on, and there's a lot of conversations that go right past each other and they don't intersect. And it's really hard to listen sometimes when you're
Mhm.
being abused. That's what's happening. A lot of abuse is going on verbally, and of course, systematically, economically, health systems, all the things regarding immigration and so on. There's a lot of abuse going on here. So we need to get some language around this. I'm reminded of a interesting conflict I had with a parishioner at a certain time. I don't think you ever had any of those, did you? You never had any conflicts with parishioners in your life, but this person was very dogmatic in their thinking, and also was very rigid in their arguments. And he would say to me over and over again when we were having a little conversation about some things I didn't agree with, he says, "Am I right or am I right? Am I right or am I right?" And of course, he was used to people in his life saying, "Well, you're right, you're right." But I said to him on several occasions, "No, you're not right. So let's
Mhm.
talk about it." You said, and that threw him off when I pushed back against this try to overwhelming pressure, the bullyism that was going on. No, you're not right. And in order for you to not be right, then I have to say my piece and we have to come to some understanding or go our separate ways. So I
Well,
don't
I
know if
often I had some people who said to me, and sometimes it was try to catch you
yeah,
in a scriptural debate around the question of the inerrancy of scripture or a
right.
particular point of view or how theology shapes politics. And, sometimes you say, well, Bishop, well, I like to play the devil's advocate when I'm in a discussion. And you know what I would say, Brad? I would say the devil doesn't need an advocate. I said, if you want to be an advocate, be a child advocate, be a peace advocate, be a
right.
reconciliation advocate, be an advocate for feeding the hungry. I said the devil doesn't need an advocate.
Yeah.
We need to embrace the as best we can. And Brad, it really troubles me. I'm glad we're talking, and I hope our listeners. I'm not the only one. It troubles me the Jesus that's being promoted often. It doesn't seem like the Jesus that we know. I mean,
Oh,
you know,
yeah. Oh my goodness.
if you need to
Preach.
accept Jesus Christ as Lord and be saved, that you might go to heaven. I'm not arguing with you at that point, but what about the Jesus who says, that we ought not that the freedom should come to the we should feed the hungry, we should clothe the naked, the Matthew 25 Jesus, the
Yes.
Matthew of the Sermon on the Mount Jesus, blessed are the peacemakers Jesus,
Yeah.
blessed are those who the John Wesley said the Sermon on the Mount was the backdrop for the social ethic of the new creation and indeed the church. And in fact, Wesley in our Wesleyan Methodist tradition was, there is no church or witness apart from the love of God, the love of neighbor, and the embracing of social, what we call today social justice. And you can call it acts of mercy and equality if somehow you oppose. Did you know in 1908, really the first social creed came into being, which became the foundation for what was later in the Methodist Church, the social principles? Let me share an excerpt from that, Brad,
Please
and
do.
you will know you can tell it's 1908 because of the language.
Yes.
The Methodist Episcopal Church advocates for, this is 1908, equal rights and complete justice for all men in all stations of life.
Okay.
Now, that
No
would
men
be
no
acceptable,
mention of women there at all, right?
no
So
mention of women. The protection of workers from dangerous machinery, diseases, and injuries. The abolition of child labor. Some people forget, Brad, you're a historian, that
sure.
child labor was very much part not only of in other countries, but here in the United
Oh,
States.
of course, yes.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
In
and
fact,
that
the garment industry, cotton. When not only slavery, people are associated. Well, maybe that you mean just no. This is not slavery. It was not against the law for children, uh, you know, to work
yeah,
and to be forced to work. At least this is what the social creed of 1908. At least one day off a week from work. Now we
sure.
just assume that boy, everybody has a day off or 2 weeks. That was not always the law of the
They
land.
were not the given, and of course that led to, labor reforms that had to do with safety and
Yes,
all kinds of
yes,
other things and fair wages and things of that nature all went to play because that was going on historically. Now we have a new set of injustices, maybe not new, but they are been magnified, the injustices of our day. And they are played out, as you said, in things like insurance, like healthcare systems being diminished, Medicare and Medicaid being assaulted, and the poor being over assaulted. So I
and
love the
the final piece of that golden rule. Here's the catch, Brad. The final line on the original social creed was recognition of the golden rule. So
oh
we
okay yeah
early Methodists embraced as part of our understanding of what would be so you later call it the work of church and society, social principles, was there must be and this is theological and biblical. There
Absolutely.
must be a recognition of the golden rule. They meant that in the understanding of the fabric of relationships in community, not just a line in the Bible, but that was to be the way in which the plumb line for our relating to one another. We
Well,
ought
it,
to treat people this applied, and we've later applied that in our understanding of immigrants.
yeah,
The United Nations, early on in the establishment of the United Nations, one of those things that was established was that people who were fleeing war would have the right to travel to other countries to find safety and
yes,
sanctuary. So we often think of this as something people are just trying to come through borders, and so our president recently spoke to the United Nations and said to 193 countries, you need to all
yeah,
shut down your borders.
oh
You
yeah,
you need to all turn your back away from the hoax that is known as climate
sure.
creation care.
Some ridiculous
And
statements
I'm
there.
not
Yeah.
turning my back on the understanding that the earth is the Lord's and the fullness thereof. Climate creation care is something that I think we have been mandated to care about as followers of the living Lord,
Yeah.
Jesus Christ. So,
Well,
uh,
well, I would like to, I love what you're sharing there, and I would like to kind of lean in for a second to what you shared that, what are the theological biblical foundations of all this? And you've mentioned the golden rules several times in our conversation thus far. So, what does Jesus say about that? What's the biblical foundation of the golden rule? And let's just kind of unpack that. Let's exegete the text just a little bit here.
mhm. Well, let's see, Luke 6:31. Um, the other text, and I think what I like about Paul uh, following up on Jesus is in Romans. It says, we don't overcome, we do not overcome evil by doing evil. We overcome evil by doing good. So,
Yes.
which is a follow up on.
Well, Matthew 7:12, I believe, is another place that we can discuss perhaps.
Mhm. Do to others as you would have them do to you.
Hmm.
If you love those who love you, what credit is that to you? For even sinners love those who love them. If you do good to those who do good to you, what credit is that to you? For even sinners do that. But love your enemies. Do good and lend, expecting nothing in return. Your reward will be great. And you will be called children of the Most High.
Hmm.
For the one is kind to the ungrateful and even the wicked. Be merciful just as God has been merciful to you. So
Wow.
these are the teachings of Jesus that, God so loved the world, and we pray the Lord's Prayer, forgive us our trespasses as we forgive those who trespass against, forgive us our debts as we forgive those who trespass against us. Jesus commands his followers to love all persons, even those who actually seek their detriment. But the love is not a sentimental abstraction, but the giving and supporting of one another in times of need. And to practice this love is never, I'm reading the commentary from the Wesley study,
Yes.
the love is never conditioned upon other person's behavior. It's motivated by its giver, not its receiver. We
Yes.
must be motivated by the one whom we follow. That's what I meant about the Jesus that I know, and the Jesus that we know, Brad, is not a Jesus who is saying that violence must be embraced, or that our language should be driven by words of retribution or
Yeah. The
payback.
words of retribution and payback, they just don't jive with the message of Jesus. They just don't.
Mm.
And I love the Eugene Peterson's in the message version of the Bible in the Matthew 7:12. and what you just read from another version there, he calls it's a simple rule of thumb guide for behavior. And I like that
Mm-hmm.
rule of thumb that he uses there. Ask yourself what you want people to do for you, then grab the initiative. He goes on to say, I love that word, taking the
Mm-hmm.
initiative and do it for them. And uh,
Mm-hmm.
and I love that. It's about taking the initiative. So, what are some ways that we can be initiative takers and apply the rule of thumb to what's going on in the world right now? How can we be that encourager in times of discouragement when there are so many people who are just leaning into retribution and hatred and hate speech and all the other rest of it and acts of violence, which is happening all the time?
Well, I think one thing we can do is we can acknowledge when all is not well,
Yes,
and that's where I
call it
am right
out.
now.
Call
All
it
is
out.
not well,
All is not well.
and
Call it out. Yeah.
because some people are feeling like, well, is there something wrong with me where this just doesn't feel right? Uh, you know, uh, Children are still dying in Gaza. It just doesn't feel right. Children are still dying in Ukraine. It just doesn't. Children are still dying in the Democratic Republic of the Congo.
Yes.
Children now uh, are going to school recognizing that benefits that they previously had will no longer exist.
Hmm.
So it just doesn't seem right that even our tax dollars can go towards private education that allows for schools to actually to discriminate
Hmm.
and not accept all students. But my mother, who recently passed away, was a retired public school teacher, and one of the things the school teachers used to say in the public school teachers is that we accept all of the students who come to us who are in the communities where we serve, regardless of their race, regardless of their ability to speak English, uh, that they have a right to access to public education. So I think one of the things we can do is I call it the find three friends strategy, Brad.
Hmm. I love it.
What's the find three friends? Find three friends that you can talk about these issues with, that you can pray about the things that trouble you and the things that excite you.
Yeah.
For me, it's it's finding joy in persons who have found their calling, whatever their calling might be. If your calling is music, uh, there's a quote I think is from Leonard Bernstein, who, after the killing of John Kennedy, the assassination of John Kennedy, said, "We must make more beautiful music."
Yes.
And
For
I know that may be a paraphrase, but I
well,
believe in this time, Brad, we need to make more beautiful music.
it's about
And someone asked me, yeah.
responding to hatred with love, responding with ugliness with beauty, responding to screaming with singing, all this type of thing. I love that, and I think these are kind of things that, as we think about love and justice and resurrecting the golden rule, and I love that imagery that you're coming up with here today. These are things that we need to encourage our local churches, our pastors, our lay people, people who are engaged on the front lines of this battle between those who would advocate the golden rule and those who would diminish it. There are some encouraging words we need to offer those folks and just support them. And so, what do you have to? What kind of things would you want to share with those folks who are on the front lines of this battle?
I would say, listen, uh, invite the church not just to come to join you for worship, invite them to join you for prayer and study, invite them to join you for public acts of mercy and charity, and for public acts of justice.
Hmm.
It's not. I don't apologize at all for asking people that have been elected, who have been elected to serve me and all of the citizens of whatever jurisdiction that you might be living in, and say, listen, these are things that are important to us. Are you standing for the well-being of children? As a person of faith, I'd like to know that, because I
Sure.
like to support you if you are, and I like to call you out if you're not.
Sure.
Are you
Absolutely.
standing for access to due process, so that people should not just be arrested and disappeared in a
Hmm.
country
Right.
like ours? Are you standing for the Constitution, or for sound bites and social media posts where you're directed to do harm to others?
Hmm.
We have to not just invite people to worship a God where we sing Jesus and me, uh, and we forget that the church is an organization, is an institution that really exists for others. We
Yes.
often think we often treat it, and my wife will often says like a private social club, but the church really exists for others,
Yes.
and
Well, that's what the Golden Rule
we
is about.
should really
Treat others as you want to be treated. Treat others that way. And I think a part of that process, then, you mentioned here, a practical step is to find 3 people that you can have a conversation with and be supportive. But maybe we also need to find maybe 3 others, maybe we don't always agree with, and
right.
find some way to listen, to learn, to understand, to hear in order to be heard, these
Mhm.
type of things. And that may not be as comfortable. That may be those forums that you're talking about here that can be a part of the process. But at
Mhm.
any rate, we need resurrection of the golden rule. I love that. And so, any thoughts that you have to kind of conclude our conversation here today, Bishop Trimble, about the golden rule, or Wesley, or the biblical record, Jesus, anything else? Love and justice. You've mentioned several things here today. Excellent content here today. Well, what would you want to share as kind of a closing thought here
Well,
tonight?
I mean, this is a Wesley thought, but not just a Wesley thought. I think caring for neighbor goes hand in hand with loving God.
Hmm.
The scripture says you cannot say that you love God whom you have not seen. And I've said this before on our podcast, but we can't declare publicly in our worship, in our song, in our praise, in our call to worships, a love for God whom we have not seen uh, in the flesh, and yet we see, and then find reason not to embrace and share the golden rule in an honest, responsible, radical way with neighbors that we see every day or people that we see across the globe,
Yeah.
particularly who are the most vulnerable and often those who are overlooked by many of us who may find ourselves in a more fortunate position.
Yes. Well,
Oppression Oppression is never acceptable, and it's been said by many others before me. It's always the right time to do the right thing, and I think the right thing is rooted in this golden rule notion.
awesome. Never the wrong time to do the right thing. And as you said, rooted in the golden rule, which has been diminished a little bit, but it's our opportunity. And you give us a word of encouragement here to brighten the golden rule, to lift it up high, and to, as you say, to resurrect it and make it right front and center of what we're about as Christian folk, as pastors, as leaders in churches, and as leaders in our communities, to treat others as we would want to be treated. The golden rule. What a great word of encouragement. And that's what we're all about here on the To Be Encouraged podcast. And we thank our listeners for tuning into our podcast here today. Here on the podcast, where we look to offer an encouraging word to an often discouraged world. My name is Reverend Dr. Brad Miller, here with our host and our leader, Bishop Julius C. Trimble. Thank you for joining us today on the To Be Encouraged podcast.